Hey, there, it's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks. I decided to comply, but it was more difficult than I had imagined. The top was elasticated at tight around my chest and arms, and resisted my attempts to remove it. Eventually, with some difficulty, I managed to take it off over my head. That's it, now let's look at you, she said. This seemed a bit odd, as she had been doing virtually nothing else since we had entered the changing room. Well, you make a very pretty young lady, she said at last. Nice and slim, and with nice smooth skin. She was circling me now, looking at me from every possible angle. I felt decidedly awkward about her attentions. Do you know you're one of the best I've ever seen, she declared after a pause. I've dressed up quite a number of boys in my time, but I don't remember one who looked as good as you. You've got nice tits, what have you stuffed your bra with? I pulled a face. The whole world seemed obsessed with my bosom. Socks, I replied. Well, they've turned out very nicely, Sylvia continued. You might want to try something a bit better next time, breast forms or something like that, but they look realistic enough for now. Her eyes remained fixed on my bra and I shuffled awkwardly. They're not really the tights for formal wear, she went on, but they'll do for now. You might want something else for the contest itself. What's wrong with them? I asked. Well, she began, thick black tights look sexy enough with a short skirt, but when you've got an elegant dress on, you'll need something a bit lighter, perhaps a nice pair of stockings or something like that. I pulled a face. I thought I had managed to avoid stockings, I just hoped she didn't mention her idea to Anita, who was bound to pounce on it. We've got some out the front. You'd need a suspender belt as well, of course, unless you've got one? I shook my head. Well, we'll see about that later. She continued to examine me. You really are nice and feminine all over, she told me, especially your face. You've got really dainty features, that's what makes you so pretty. I squirmed at this comment as she returned to face me again. You really should have been a girl, you're so good at it. I can't imagine you'd be a very good boy, although I've never seen you as one, of course. I pulled another face. The idea of making a good girl and a poor boy didn't appeal to me at all. Don't look like that, she went on. It's a compliment. I often think I'd have made a better boy myself, so it's nothing to be ashamed of. I don't think you'd make a good boy, I mumbled. Oh, I don't know, she went on. I'm really tall, and quite strong. Besides, I like to take the lead in relationships as well. She stopped for a moment and tilted her head to one side. Then she continued. Still, that's enough about me, we're supposed to be sorting you out a dress. With that she went to the door at the corner of the room and opened it. All was dark inside, but she fumbled around the corner and found the light switch, then turned it on. Standing where I was, I couldn't see much of the room, but it was obviously bigger than the cupboard I had imagined it to be. Let's think what would suit you best, Sylvia mumbled to herself. You're quite short, so we'd best be careful. She looked over at me again, and because you're going to have to wear a bra, I suppose we can't have anything too strappy or backless. She went into the room, and despite my misgivings, I moved over to the doorway to see what was going on. Inside were 3 or 4 racks of dresses in every color of the rainbow. I could hardly make them out individually, but here and there I saw a piece of netting or animal skin. I guessed this was where they kept the higher costumes. Sylvia had disappeared inside, between 2 of the racks. I think we've got something that might look quite nice, she said, without looking up at me. I was by now at the doorway. She looked intently at one costume and then, shaking her head, put it back. I couldn't see what it was from where I was standing, and up to a point, I was quite grateful. I wondered for a moment if it might not be better for me to go in and pick one myself. That way I could make sure I didn't get anything too outrageous. On the other hand, I didn't want to appear to be too keen to try on a dress, especially as everyone was telling me what a good-looking girl I made. Sylvia continued to rummage, and my thoughts turned to Anita and Nikki outside in the shop. They must be getting bored by now, I thought. Then, with a sudden panic, I realized that if another customer came in and wanted to try something on, they'd come in here and see me as I was. I really had to hurry this process up. "Anything will do for me," I said, as brightly as I could. "I don't think so, young lady," responded Sylvia, without taking her eyes away from her search for the perfect dress for me. "It's not every day you get to wear a dress as special as these. I'm going to make sure you remember it for as long as you live." "I will that," I mumbled disconsolately, and looked nervously towards the curtain that separated the changing room from the shop. I still had my head turned away when Sylvia announced triumphantly, "This will do nicely." She pulled one of the dresses free from the rack and held it up. My heart sank. It was bright pink and shimmering, reflecting even the dim light of these back rooms. Sylvia marched out from between the racks and walked towards me. "Come on then, let's see what this looks like on you." I reluctantly moved out of the way of her advance, transfixed by the thing she held. She held it high off the ground, still on its hanger. I could see that it had flimsy shoulders, in the same horrendous pink material, and a plunging neckline that would draw attention to my bosom even more than Anita's tight top. "Come on," she said, "let's see if it fits you all right." I prayed a silent prayer that it would not, but, trembling, moved slowly back into the changing room. Sylvia took the dress off its hanger and smoothed it out. It was fairly simply cut, for which I was grateful, and plain, without any fancy bits and pieces like glitter or flowers, but it was so pink. Sylvia undid the zip on the back of the dress and motioned me over. Like an automaton I moved forwards. "Turn around then," she urged me, and I did as I was asked. Taking advantage of her superior height, she put her arms over my shoulders and held the dress out in front of me. "In you get then, princess," she urged me brightly. She shook the thing a couple of times, so I could see the hole through which I had to step. I bit my lip. I knew I was going to regret this, but I could see no alternative but to put the dress on. I stepped in, and Sylvia immediately began pulling the thing up to my shoulders. It felt so odd. Strangely cold and satin-like, and yet heavy with the yards of material it contained. Sylvia eased it over my bra and lifted the shoulders into place. They were, I noticed, thinner than I had thought, but were sort of covered with a little flap of pink material that hung down my own shoulder. Fumbling at my back, Sylvia found the zip, which was more or less in my bum. I jumped as she touched me. "Breathe in," she commanded, and I did so, closing my eyes in anticipation of the horror. Sylvia pulled the zip up to my neck. "There," she said. "My word, you are a beauty." I opened my eyes, and they fell on one of the mirrors. I was transfixed. Where before there had been a gauche and awkward-looking schoolgirl, there was now something quite different. My mouth fell open in surprise. I really was beautiful, and I hated it. The dress clung tight to my chest, and then was fitted into my waist, making it look narrow and girlish. Below there, it fell away to the floor like a pink waterfall, shimmering in the light almost like plastic. Even I was impressed at how feminine it made me look. Without thinking, I turned sideways a little to get a different view. The dress swayed crazily against my legs as I did so. Sylvia was smiling benignly. "So do you like it?" I couldn't speak, but feebly shook my head. "I think your girlfriends will," Sylvia said, smiling. "Come on, shall we show them?" I froze. I didn't want Anita to see me like this. There was no way on God's earth that she would ever go out with me after seeing me like this. "No, it's all right," I said timidly. Sylvia's grin only broadened. "Oh, I think they would want to see you, come on." She offered me the crook of her arm, still smiling, and reluctantly I took it. "Let's go." Walking in the long frock was an entirely new experience for me. It seemed determined to trip me up on every step, and the thwop of my skirt had been replaced by a swish from the satin against my legs. "Mind you don't tread on the hem," advised Sylvia, as we walked slowly forward to the curtain. She pulled it back, and the light blinded me for a moment, then she led me forward. I was dreading Anita seeing me. Once my eyes adjusted, I was in for another shock. There were several customers in the shop, looking at the clothes on the rails. I looked around for Anita or Nikki, but couldn't see them for a moment. All of the customers seemed to turn their heads to look at me as I walked through, and I closed my eyes in shame. They were bound to realize I was a boy. "Oh my goodness, you look wonderful," came Anita's voice. I opened my eyes to see her coming from behind the till. She looked around at a couple of young women, who were also looking at me. "Sarah," she declared, with emphasis on the name, "that is just so you. Come and have a look, Sue." I looked into Anita's face, willing her not to give the game away by some rash comment. She was open-mouthed and wide-eyed with excitement as she eyed me up and down. "Come over here so I can see you better," she exclaimed. By this time Sue had come over from behind the till as well. Both of them looked shocked at how I looked, and I bit my lip in shame. "Look at you," exclaimed Sue. "Oh, that is just fantastic. Give us a twirl then." "Go on," she urged. Reluctantly I turned slowly around, and the dress turned with me. "Oh my goodness," said Anita, "you look adorable in that." "Doesn't?" She paused almost imperceptibly before continuing, "She certainly does," agreed Sue. "I've always liked that one, but I'm too dumpy for it." "But our Sarah looks a dream in it." "Yes," agreed Anita enthusiastically, "an absolute dream. There's only one thing spoiling it though, hang on." She stepped over to me and reached up for my hair. With some effort, she removed the hair ribbons and elastic bands, and took out my bunches. The hair from the wig tumbled down onto my shoulders and into my face. Anita brushed it gently away, and I trembled at her closeness. "Oh, that's much better," declared Sue with gusto. "We'll really have to think what to do with it for your big night though." "That's true," agreed Anita, still only inches from my face. A woman who had been looking at blouses came over to Sue at this point, while looking at me. I held my breath, thinking she was going to complain that they'd let a boy try on one of the dresses. "Excuse me," she said, with a quaint and quiet voice, "I didn't know you did formal wear like that." "Oh yes," said Sue brightly. "Most of it is for hire, but we sell some too. We've got a brochure if you would like one." "Oh yes, please," the woman replied. "My granddaughter's graduating in a few weeks' time. It would be nice for her to have the perfect dress for it." "Of course, let me get you a brochure then," Sue replied. "We'll have one too," came a voice from behind me. It was one of the younger women who had been staring at me before. "We're having a bit of a posh do at college. Something like that would be perfect." Sue looked nonplussed for a moment, then said, "Of course," and went over to the till. "Well, it looks like you're doing wonders for our sales," said Sylvia from behind me. "Maybe we ought to have you in here more often." "Oh, that's good," exclaimed Anita. "How about that, Sarah? An offer of a modeling job already?" She giggled at this, and I squirmed even more. Sue came back with the hire brochures and handed them out. To my relief, the other customers moved away to read them, and the old lady, at least, left the shop. Well, Sarah, said Anita. Do you like it? She looked intently at me for an answer. I shrugged, which probably looked odd in the dress, and said, It's all right, I suppose. Oh, don't be so coy, exclaimed Sue. You look fantastic in it, and I bet it feels fabulous. I don't know about that, I responded. It's really heavy. But it's worth it for the effect, grinned Anita. You look just so lovely in it, I can't believe it. I can't imagine we could find anything better for, she paused again, looking over at the two college girls examining the brochure. Your big day. I thought Nikki had already sorted out something, I said, hoping that this would relieve me of the threat of having to wear this dress at the contest. Where is she anyway? She's gone to get that shopping she promised her mom. Anita replied. She did say she'd sorted out something you could have, but I can't imagine it would be as wonderful as this. I really think you ought to have it. Well, there's the small matter of the higher charge, Sylvia put in. Anita looked immediately crestfallen. Oh, she said, with a worried expression on her face. How much is it then? How many nights will you need it for? Sylvia asked. Well, Anita began, Sarah's big night is on Thursday. We can't really pick it up that morning, because we've got other things to do. We'd have to pick it up on Wednesday, so 2 nights I suppose. Sylvia was silent for a moment. Well, that's £40 then, plus a £50 deposit, which you'd get back when you get the dress back here. Anita looked heartbroken. I haven't got that sort of money, she said. I've already spent most of what I had spare on tights and that necklace. Oh, what a shame. Yes, agreed Sue. Especially when it suits her so much. And makes her look so feminine, added Anita, earnestly. Please subscribe for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.